Astrology. Any magician worth his salt is going to be well studied and versed in astrology, as it ties into the law of rhythm, one of the 7 Hermetic principles. It's probably the second most important consideration after the law of polarity. I've already discussed that it's important to maintain a rhythmic breathing, that the rhythm is more important than the count. Everything has a rhythm. Astrology is the magician's timepiece. It's going to let you know when it's a good time to do something and when it's not. In occult circles, it's known as the swinging of the pendulum. The magician does not want to go against the swinging of the pendulum. He wants to go with the tide instead of against it. One either rules the planets or the planets will rule you. And one begins to rule the planets by going with the tide instead of against it. If you ever wondered why Wiccans are so fixated on the cycles of the moon, this is why. Everything has a rhythm, a cycle of waxing and waning. The tide comes in and the tide goes out. And I use the example of the tide specifically because it's regulated by the cycle of the moon. So if someone wanted to bring something to them, they would do magic during the waxing phase of the moon. And if they want to rid themselves of something, they would do magic during the waning phase of the moon. It's a push and a pull, expansion and contraction, a cycle of give and take. But the moon is not the only thing that waxes and wanes and has these cycles. The other planets do as well. And so the magician knows where the planets are at any given time. The law of rhythm is directly related to what we know as frequency. Now, most people think of frequency when dealing with the law of vibration. You hear of frequency and vibration. But frequency is not the same thing. Frequency is like the bridge over between the law of rhythm and the law of vibration. Because frequency is really just the number of times that something does something in a certain given amount of time. Hopefully you've read the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill that I talked about previously. In that book they talk about hypnotic rhythm. And this is the thing that people get trapped into with their habits. Habits have a certain frequency. If you're a smoker, you're going to go have X number of cigarettes within any given hour. That is a frequency. How frequent something is done. Now, vibration has a frequency also, the number of times something vibrates back and forth. But while all vibration is a rhythm, not all rhythm is a vibration. And so frequency is the bridge over between those. They're similar, but they're not quite the same. But they do tie into each other using frequency. Now, we're aware that many people believe that astrology is bullshit, Taurus, or horseshit, Sagittarius, mainly because of the daily horoscopes, which are rubbish. They are. Because at best they're only taking a person's sun sign into account and not the full chart. And at worst, they're just making them up. So yeah, the daily horoscopes are going to be hit and miss at best. And again, belief isn't required. Astrology works whether you believe in it or not. It's just you either know it or you don't. With all the vast astrological symbolism being thrown around in your face every day, somebody knows something that the masses don't. Oh, well, that's just their logo. Well, yeah, logo, logos. In a pre-Socratic philosophy, the principle governing the cosmos, the source of this principle, or human reasoning about the cosmos. In Judaism, in biblical Judaism, the Word of God, which itself has creative power and is God's medium of communication with the human race. Words such as logo aren't chosen because they merely sound cool. They're chosen because they have a very distinct meaning and reason behind them. So the daily horoscopes are rubbish and are used to discredit real astrology because they try to use a cookie-cutter approach for everyone. However, one of the first things you learn when you actually study astrology is that everyone's chart is unique. The sun is in Scorpio right now, so people born during this period of time will say, I'm a Scorpio. And yet everyone has the sign of Scorpio somewhere in their chart. They may have one planet in it. They may have several. They may have none. Are those planets conjunct, square, or in opposition to other planets? And so the chart becomes your own energetic blueprint. I didn't believe in astrology either, because my sun sign is Capricorn, and the traits typically associated with Capricorn were hit and miss. I would have some, but I would be very far removed from others. It wasn't until I actually studied my own chart that everything began to make sense. Because depending on where the planets are placed, certain planets can override qualities of the other. And so everyone's chart is unique. I forget how many hundreds of thousands of years it takes for all the planets to realign exactly where they were at the beginning in relation to the others. But it's a while, and certainly way past our lifetimes. However, when studying astrology, you also realize, you know the saying that no one's cut from a different cloth, and that we're all one, or that we're all made of the same thing. Well, yeah. It's just depending on the energies, where they're placed, and how they interact with the other energies, is going to determine how you are. And predictably so. Everything has their correspondences. That's why I told you that I'm always thinking in terms of correspondences and their planetary associations. It's certainly a good habit for a magician to get into. If I get a hold of someone's natal chart, their birth chart, I can probably know them better than they know themselves. I've been able to see things such as being abused as a child by the father, the early death of a sibling, anger issues, sexual preferences, etc. It's all in there. And that's primarily what astrology as a profession focuses on. Telling people how they are, and the planet's influence on them and their psyche. Which you don't really need because you know how you are. Which is exactly why I thought that astrology was rubbish, because the daily horoscopes were always wrong. That's not who I was. But when you take the whole entire chart into account, you'll find out otherwise. Now, if you need any other incentive to study astrology, astrologers are one of the highest paid professions, period. And they can make anywhere, say the real good ones, make anywhere up to $150 an hour. Don't believe me? Go shop around for an astrologer. And they do make their money because it does take quite a bit of time to interpret someone's chart, which is exactly why I don't read people's charts anymore for them as clients, because if you're going to do astrology as a profession, that's all you're going to be doing. That's all you're going to have time for. I like to primarily use astrology to time my magic with the law of rhythm and the law of correspondence, which we'll be getting into. The law of polarity is very much within every chart as well. We will be getting into some of the basics of astrology soon enough, but I'm hoping that most of you already have some astrological knowledge, because this channel and these lessons are intended to teach you things that are not being taught anywhere else or in the books. The astrology books are a dime a dozen, and they all pretty much say the same thing. It's a good place to start, and I suggest you do start there. Because if you're new to astrology, you're going to learn far more from the books than you are going to here at first. But we will be getting into some of the basics, although brief as it is. We'll also be covering the method that I use personally that makes learning astrology very easy. And that will about do it for today. So until next time, take care.